The next life period can be viewed in a couple of ways. Financially, it was a disaster, plain and simple. The years spent in Florida should have been peak earning years for me. I had been the first director of academic computing at Curry. I achieved the academic position of assistant professor of computing. I was there for some 9 years. I was the MIS director at the Boston Architectural Center for about a year. In both cases, I created and grew several programs, specifically expanding the nascent computing curriculum at Curry, as well as being the prime mover in its efforts to populate the academic and institutional sides of the campus with computing hardware. Also, preparing the groundwork for Curry's campus-wide network. I was offered but declined the computer czar position at the college. After transitioning to the BAC, I completely reorganized the academic and institutional computing efforts there. Ultimately, my plans were in the process of being implemented when I quit in order to move to Florida when Janet was offered the full-time position in the travel industry. Was I burned out or was it just wanderlust? I certainly had mental problems though. The fundamental problem with that precipitous move was that it was done without any plan on my part for making a living. Essentially, at 47, I ran smack into a financial brick wall and then fell right down to the ground. I never had another full-time job. I was willing to settle for low-paying, no-benefit jobs while we lived in Florida. I should have focused my energies on seeking out a comparable position to what I had, while I could still parlay my expertise and achievements to something approaching what I had abandoned. On the other hand, from a mental health standpoint, Janet and I had some great times in Florida. If anything, we grew closer as we shared experiences ranging from the theme parks to cruises to walking the beaches of St. Petersburg and Fort Lauderdale. I don't think it would be too far a stretch to say that we got closer to our children. The time we did spend with them was usually fun, and we did a lot of talking. Also talking on the telephone for considerable periods. I doubt Jen and Paul would wholly agree, and I'm not saying that we would have been even closer had we stayed in Massachusetts. In the following video, I will be relating more familial experiences and feelings and fewer occupational experiences, though I will refer to the kinds of work I did and some of the things I learned doing my various part-time jobs. I am also omitting lengthy narratives about the cruises we took or the reviews of hundreds of books that I read for the sake of time and because I think it would just make viewing the videos a bit too tedious and too long. We found out on April 7th of '94 that Vic had an operation at UMass Medical that moved half his stomach. When Jan got to Orlando, she almost lost it initially because she couldn't figure out where anything was on the rental car. It was so big. But the fellow at the rental agency explained the controls and she decided to take the car after all. At the beginning of May, I packed the car up with as much stuff as I could squeeze in and headed to Florida to join Janet. And the first Sunday after I arrived, we spent the day at Epcot Center. Jennifer joined us on May 14th. On the 16th, I took her to Universal Studios. She wanted to apply for a summer job there, but couldn't commit to their summer schedule. She wasn't thrilled about the hot weather in Florida and didn't seem to be interested in going to any attractions. When she finally did find a job, I drove her to work in the mornings. She had a paper tacked to the inside of her closet door that marked off the days until she would be heading back to school. She was getting better about being there, though. The job helped her attitude a lot. Paul Jr. wasn't happy with his living arrangements with Ann and Frank. He complained that they hardly talked to him when he was around, and that the kids woke him up early in the morning. Ann said that he was hardly ever around. He said he was going to move in with his friend Tommy and said that they really wanted him there. Paul and Alicia visited us in mid-June for several days. We all went to Busch Gardens north of Tampa. Jan and I went one way and the kids went the other. They rode the new roller coaster Kumba, rather Paul did, and Alicia watched. Saturday night, we went to SeaWorld. The highlight of the evening was the light and fireworks show at around 9:30 at night. Part of the show used laser lights displayed against a curtain of water, creating a three-dimensional effect. As we were leaving the park, a storm started and began to pour, thunder and lightning. We were all running for the car with Paul in the lead. At some point, we lost him, since we were getting soaked, and found him hiding under some bushes next to the car. But I had to give him credit for remembering where the heck the car was. That was probably one of the highlights of their day, though. On Sunday morning, we all went to Disney's Wilderness Lodge to have a family-style breakfast. Later that June, I got a job at Disney, working at a retail outlet for the summer at the Ticket and Transportation Center, just south of the Magic Kingdom proper, in a small but busy merchandising location called Mickey's Place. It was kind of a trivial job, and I was putting in about 30 hours a week. July 1st was our 22nd anniversary. We had breakfast on the 15th floor of Disney's Contemporary Hotel and requested a seat by the window that overlooked the whole of the Magic Kingdom and the Seven Seasons Lagoon. The monorails and the ferry boats could be seen shuttling back and forth. We spent most of the day walking around the Magic Kingdom and then to Disney MGM Studios. We watched a half-hour live performance of Beauty and the Beast. And at one point during the day, Janet said this was the best anniversary ever. One of our favorite things to do at Disney was to head to the Grand Floridian and listen to the live piano music and the small band situated in the balcony that overlooked the lobby. The plush couches were very comfortable. During that week, we were able to attend a jazz concert at Epcot 94. Maynard Ferguson, the trombone player and composer, was the featured artist. Jen told her mother that was the worst 4th of July in her life. She didn't do anything. Her choice. By July, several people had left Thomas Cook. A couple just went back to Cambridge. They couldn't afford to live there. Most, though, got other jobs in the area. Janet felt stressed because they made her and others do so many different things. Southern Living, where they were supposed to be telephone travel agents. TCV, where they were supposed to be an extension of the Cambridge operation. Book cruises, which she likes to do. And they were to be training agents for some kind of discount motel operation for the Orlando Travel Bureau. She was talking about finding something else, but didn't know what. On the one hand, she had been hassled so much by Jen about how we have failed her that she was anxious to see Jen off. On the other, she said she understands how Jen feels, that we should be providing her with a permanent home and helping with the finances. Very well by Jennifer up until that point. Unlike the vast majority of her peers, she hadn't taken out any loans, mostly because Brandeis had been awarding her large scholarships since freshman year. Jen and I had contributed somewhere between $2,500 to $3,000 a year for the previous 3 years. Now, you've got to give credit to Jennifer because, she earned those scholarships. For Jen, the last full day in Orlando before returning to Massachusetts in a room in Southbridge with Louise and Vic for several weeks, we let her suggest activities. Later, we walked along the water to the Grand Floridian to do the buffet there. We ate slowly and a lot, and it was very enjoyable. After dinner, we took Jen to the top of the Contemporary Hotel, to the 15th floor. Since Florida is so flat and you can see for miles, Jen, as usual, seemed rather ho-hum about the view. In early August, Jen had her foot operation. He operated on both feet and had to insert screws into the bone. They even displayed some of the bone that they cut out to her. When I called, I caught her just coming in the door. She was very tired from having to climb the steps and was worried about putting pressure on her feet. I can understand why. She was also nauseous, but once she had lain down for a few minutes, the feeling seemed to pass. All she remembers, she said, was feeling very tired, even sleeping during the operation, and didn't remember any of the particulars about the procedure itself. In October, I worked a 2-day assignment at MCI in downtown Orlando for Norrell. I worked mostly with Excel and Windows. It was kind of tedious work, but I enjoyed working on the machines. Still in '94, with the holidays approaching, Janet was upset about what to do about the holidays. On the one hand, she wanted to spend some time back in Massachusetts, but not too much. She really didn't want to waste 5 vacation days, as she said, hanging around her mother's. She absolutely wanted to see the kids. I have not mentioned all the travels that year, but we did a lot of driving on our days off, enjoying all the attractions and many restaurant meals. In November, Jan spent a weekend back in Massachusetts visiting her parents, friends, and the kids. Paul took her out to Bertucci's after he picked her up at the airport. Jan said that Paul looked good and in his usual nice self. She hadn't really spent much time with Jen. She did remark that Jen had lost even more weight, but that she looked healthy and was in good spirits. On the 19th, Jan sent me a letter, even though she hates to write letters. It was my first letter ever from her, 2 pages both sides. It was very affectionate and loving, and I was really moved. On the 21st, Jan called, and I told her how surprised and delighted I was to get the letter. She kind of giggled the way she does when she gets embarrassed. She said she definitely is looking forward to coming back to Florida and the warm weather, if not necessarily to her job. I was sent by Norrell to a business called Advo, ADVO. For a while, I was re-entering data from hard copy, paper, onto a disk using Lotus 123. The original file was destroyed somehow. It took me a day to re-enter some 500 rows of data. 2 observations. Lotus is a spreadsheet program for number crunching. A database would be more appropriate in this case. Secondly, using a scanner with OCR, optical character recognition capabilities, would have completed the task in a much shorter period of time. But it provided me with some work. Contrary to what she said earlier in the summer, Jen was returning for the Christmas holiday. She did mention to Jan that she was a little hesitant about coming down because she thought she might get bored. It's so hard to talk to her. It's difficult to find a subject. She doesn't want to talk about school or what she intends to do after graduation. On December 17th, we drove to Epcot Center to watch the Christmas show. It was fabulous. It was really a Christmas service. Robert Urich, a TV actor, specifically Spencer for Hire, narrated the Christmas story. The music was beautiful and varied. On the 23rd, I picked Jen up at the airport. She had lost more weight, but looked very good. I told her that even though she was the only one on the escalator, that I had to do a double take before I could recognize her. I decided to take her to Jan's workplace, even though we were supposed to meet her at home. Jan was very pleased that we stopped by. Over the next few days, we went back to Disney. Jen seems to like Epcot the best. She said that she intends to take the next year off from the educational track and work applying to a graduate school. She was taking a job during the semester to do some proofing for a publishing department at Brandeis. On Christmas, I placed Christmas stocking on the chair so that Jen would see it when she came out of the bedroom. She finally woke up and came out. Typically, she showed little excitement when she saw the stocking, but we understood her enough to know that she appreciated it. She was genuinely happy to get the pullover sweater, though they did go back in the morning because Jen wanted to get a different color. Jen had an eventful flight back to Boston. She called and spoke to Jan, who said that Jen had sounded pleased to be back with her friends. We had a good week together. We tried to keep her busy and entertained while she was there. We even gave her the bedroom while Jan and I made do with the food. On January 11th, 95, Vic and Louise came to Florida to visit us. Both really enjoyed the drive to our apartment, observing the palm trees and even some orange trees with the fruit still on them. They seemed to like our apartment on Sheldon Road, and the ponds. Vic and I took a long walk along the fitness path which circled the whole complex. They headed out to Daytona and St. Augustine. Apparently, they liked Daytona. They got a big kick out of being able to drive around the beach. By the evening, they were at the hotel in St. Augustine where they would spend several nights. An important piece of news came from Janet. As she was getting into the car when I picked her up from work, she told me that they finally got word that the employees will be laid off in April. She was to be paid 6 or 7 weeks of severance pay and would be eligible to collect unemployment. The future is even more up in the air at that point. She was in pretty good mood. I think she was relieved. After Louise and Vic returned to Massachusetts, Louise called and said that they had spent more than they expected, but they had really great vacation. I know Vic enjoyed himself. He kept remarking how impressed he was by almost everything he saw. For example, as we walked around the Wilderness Lodge, Vic and I would debate what was real wood and what was imitation. He's a real pleasure to take places. He appreciates everything so much. I was called in for a talk by the new area manager at Advo, Karen Thomas. She offered me a permanent position which would require me to do some call monitoring, calling post offices about 2 days a week to ask for percentages of mail delivered. She explained that they would try to give me as much computer work as possible. I declined, explaining that I would not be interested in the call monitoring part of the job and that I really was enjoying working as a temp, being able to work on specific projects. She asked if I would be willing to come back to Advo in the future to continue working on the RV project, and I said I would be delighted. Paul and Alicia came back for another visit. We picked them up at the airport and drove a condo to Kissimmee, where we had reservations for 2 nights. Since it was so close to Disney, we spent Saturday and Sunday at Epcot and MGM. We took in just about all the rides and attractions and treated the kids to the lavish buffet dinner at the Floridian. And we also did 2 morning buffets. Alicia refused to do the Tower of Terror, otherwise we stayed together. It was great being with the kids and doing things with them. Jan and I got in free with our annual passes, and I used my Florida license to purchase tickets for the kids at the Florida residence rates. One of the most memorable moments, for Paul at least, occurred during the performance of Beauty and the Beast. The teacup character fell over during the performance and couldn't right itself. All you could see were 2 little feet kicking. Beauty went over to try to help, but it took a stagehand to lift the character upright. The show never missed a beat, though. On February 3rd, I picked up my pay at Norrell and received a single-page newsletter which periodically accompanies the checks. In it, I was named as Employee of the Month. In the middle of the month, I worked as a staffer at the DCI conference on data warehousing, an assignment from Norrell. I was paid $7 an hour and put in about 25 hours over 3 days. Temporaries Inc. tested me and set me up with a 6-week assignment at HBJ Building in SeaWorld, the same place that Jen had worked the previous summer. I was working with McDraw and Excel on a new Power Mac 7100 laptop. Jan flew back to Mass for a visit. She went to Waltham to pick Jen up from the hospital. Jen had screws removed from her feet. I spoke to her the previous night. She was having a fair amount of pain and had to take medication. She said her thesis advisor liked her work very much, and she earned the right to address her as Jane. Toward the end of March, Janet had a phone interview for a Tampa job. She decided that working corporate reservation isn't such a bad idea. She'd still be an employee of American Express Travel, but not sure if her salary would change. She was excited about the possibility of our moving to Tampa. During the first week in April, HR in Cambridge called wanting to talk to Jan about the offer. They talked for only a short time, about 10 minutes. She said that this would be a lateral move, in other words, the same pay, but the Amex would provide between $500 and $1,000 for moving expenses. I worked another full week at the GE auditing team. Jen called to let us know that she had been invited to join Phi Beta Kappa. She received a letter from her professor, Jane, commenting on her 60 to 70 page thesis. Jen read the comments word for word. They were high praise for Jen's scholarship and writing ability. It sounded like something from a New York Times book review. Jen was also excited about an interview she had with the Brown publishers for an editorial assistant's position. She spoke to 3 different people and felt that the interviews went well. We spent most of May 5th in St. Petersburg. We attended the Festival of Arts. There was music all day long, ending with an afternoon performance by the Association, a group that was big in the 60s. They sang for about an hour and did a variety of their own songs, like Cherish. It ended by singing some of the popular songs from other groups, including one of my favorites, Jeremiah Was a Bullfrog. We also got to take in the exhibition, Treasure of the Tsars. The artifacts were originals, many of them not shown in public since the time of the Tsars. The exhibition covered the Romanov dynasty, all 18 individuals. It was organized very efficiently. The elegance, antiquity, and luxury of the pieces was very impressive. The Fabergé eggs were especially so. There was a poignant statement, one of the reasons why the articles were so elaborate and ornate. It was a religious tenet that beauty was an expression of God on earth, and it was the duty of mankind to take the raw material from the earth and create beautiful objects with it. On May 9th, Jen called and began with, guess what? First thing that came to mind from the excitement in her voice was that she had found a job. She said, "Oh, Daddy, I had to defend my thesis today." I explained that I had just mentioned that fact this morning to someone, yet it had escaped me when she asked. When she put the same question to her mother, she got the same response, and then she got a little upset. Anyway, she apparently did a bang-up job in the 45-minute session with 3 professors. One of them in particular is a recognized author and professor in his own right, and told her she had found her niche. He asked her for a copy of the thesis so that he could steal some of her ideas. As a result, she will graduate with the highest of honors in the history department ceremony. We received a call from Louise to let us know that Vic had been invited to go to Needham and appear on the lottery TV show. Just for showing up, they get $500. And if he's selected to appear on stage, a 1 in 3 chance, then he could win thousands. The problem is that he was supposed to appear the same day of Jen's graduation. The party had to be rescheduled for late afternoon to accommodate Vic's lottery show. Louise had offered to skip the appearance, but Jan told them not to be silly and to go. Jan spoke to me about the frustration with her job. She was upset because she continued to have to ask for help and felt that the people that knew this stuff were beginning to get tired of answering questions from the newbies. She said if she'd give it a few more months, and then if she didn't feel better about the job, she'd start looking for something else. Jen called with her GRE scores, 690 in analytical and 740 verbal, which puts her in the 91st percentile and the 98th percentile, respectively. She was all excited and said that she was a little stunned when she saw the scores. She also received a card with a $100 check from my parents for her graduation. I think it borders on unbelievable that she's doing so well. She's always been smart, but she has the drive and the sense to provide her with the ability to make things happen. We are very proud of our kids. On May 20th, we were in Mass to attend Jen's graduation activities. We attended her induction into Phi Beta Kappa. She was one of about 50 people in her graduating class, which amounted to about 750, to receive the honor. She had graduated from Brandeis with the highest honors in history department for the 95 class. The first event was the history department ceremony. The moderator was humorous, but the event itself was a little less exciting. After that ceremony, we headed over to the gym where the major graduation ceremonies were held. Because of bomb threats, everyone had to go through a metal detector. We got seats to the right side of the podium, about 6 rows back, which gave us a pretty good view of the speakers. We expected this event to be anticlimactic, but the honorary degree recipients were some heavy hitters, including people such as Walter Annenberg, a big philanthropist and contributor to public broadcasting, Daniel Shore, a broadcast journalist who gave a very interesting speech as a representative of all the honorary degree recipients. At one point in his speech, he told the students that his advice would be not to go into the real world. At another point, he opined that the communications revolution has provided faster and better means to spread confusion, misunderstanding, and incitement. Prophetic. Barbra Streisand received an honorary degree and actually spoke a few words of thanks, though she wasn't scheduled to. We got a pretty good look at her, and she looked very good for her age. She appeared to be a little shorter than I expected. Louise and Vic really enjoyed the whole day, though. Louise had to take the campus shuttle because there was no way she was in any condition to walk across the campus. Because Louise and Vic were headed toward the TV station to attend a lottery show, we parted company. When we arrived at Ann's, we had to prepare for the party. The time of the party was pushed back to 4 o'clock to accommodate Vic and Louise. Janet had made a lasagna on Saturday night. I put a meat platter together and received some compliments for my design efforts. By 6, the group consisted of us, the Browns, including Frank's parents, George and Helen, Jack and Marie Perrault, with their sons Matthew and Justin. No one from my side came, and I'm not really sure of the reason except the ones they gave me, that my mother didn't feel up to the trip and Dee wasn't going if my parents didn't. Vic suddenly burst through the back door into the yard, sporting a lottery TV shirt, and put his hands in the air declaring that he was a winner. Amazingly, he had won $70,000, of which they'll see about $47,000 that week. I was so excited for them, especially Vic. There's no one in the world I'd rather see hit the jackpot. They could really use the added security. Vic was on a natural high, and Louise was a little bit more subdued. Vic called his brother Fiore and even Lena. Fiore was a past winner himself of the Megabucks, but because there were so many winners when he did, he received only about $17,000, which is significant to my mind. A few days later, we headed to Worcester. Both my mother and father seemed in pretty good shape and could have come to the graduation if they really wanted. We had a good day anyway. My father has become something of an artist as well as a wood craftsman. He's been making swings and lawn pieces that he finishes and paints himself. Diane said that he's come a long way from the stick figures he used to create. We had a fairly busy time during the week, but it was fun. We put just about 600 miles on the rental car with all the hopping about we did. As usual, Vic and Louise were very nice to us and treated us very well. We received a $500 check from Louise and Vic in the mail as a gift from their weddings. Jan and I had a serious talk for about an hour over our feelings as to where we were financially and in terms of our mental health. She vented her dissatisfaction with her current job. She actually talked to her supervisor about how tough she's finding the job. Surprisingly, the woman was sympathetic and actually made a couple of calls to other travel departments within Amex, American Exchange, but wasn't able to find out anything definitive. Jan says she feels trapped because she doesn't feel she can quit, since that would leave us on the lurch without any income whatsoever. I told her in the past that if it gets to be too much, she should just quit and let the chips fall where they may. She wonders how I can take such an attitude, as though our situation didn't bother me at all. I explained that the alternative was for me to give in to depression and anger. I referred to it as an attempt to keep my head in control of my emotions. I understood the ramifications of our situation, but I explained that I believe things will get better. On June 19th, both kids called. Jen called just as I got out of the shower, and I stood there talking to her, towel in hand, for about 20 minutes. She'd been offered the job at EDC, Educational Discovery Center, in Newton at a starting salary of $26,000. She told them she'd let them know within a few days because she was hoping to hear something from MIT, where she had also applied. Jan and I celebrated our 23rd wedding anniversary with a trip to Lido Beach in Sarasota.